I just couldn't stop drinking. And when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I thought that we were going to clean up my drinking a little bit. And then I was going to go on my way. And I actually came in and I started drinking your coffee and your cookies. And you all started talking. And something was happening in my belly. My belly started doing these backflips. And all of a sudden, I was crying a lot. And at the same time, I'm listening to your stories. I realized today I was identifying with your stories. And I was identifying with how you thought, how you felt, and how you drank.
I heard it through the grapevine.
Welcome. It's the AA Grapevine Half Hour Variety Hour featuring the collective voices of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm Olis, an alcoholic in Oakland, California.
I'm Don, an alcoholic in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Woo! Hey, Don, how you doing? I know all kinds of new things are happening in your life. Anything exciting?
Well, yeah.
Come on, tell me.
It's my anniversary this weekend. 31 years, I've made it. On the day itself, I totally remember going, okay, I'm going to AA. I'm going to AA. Because I didn't want to go to AA because I didn't want to quit drinking until that point. And I reached a point where it's like, I can't take this anymore. I have to go. And I knew two people who were in AA, and I knew that it worked. And I knew that I was going to totally destroy my life if I kept on the way I was. And luckily for me, I've been sober ever since. But reliving it like that, I was thinking back to the very first time when I realized I am in trouble if I don't have alcohol. I didn't start drinking till I was 19 years old, quite a bit older than you, I believe.
I started at 4.
So I went on this camping trip overnight, climbed a mountain with a bunch of guys.
Such a bad idea, drunk.
But that's the thing. I drank a few beers before we left, and then we took off on this trip, and I got to the top of the mountain. I went, oh, I don't have anything to drink. And I hadn't thought about it. It had never progressed to that point till then. And it was suddenly like, I'm in trouble. And I had no idea that that was going to happen.
Well, here's the truth. You're in trouble either way. You're in trouble drunk on the mountaintop.
I got drunk on the mountaintop because another guy had a bottle of whiskey. He was thoughtful.
We love the planning drunks among us.
Yeah, I've depended on the kindness of strangers.
That poor guy had to share his booze.
He had to share it with me. And I'm so glad he had it. And I never made that mistake again. But I drank for 20 more years before I quit. When I think back on it, that right there was sure sign that I'm an alcoholic.
The ominous signs I didn't heed. So, Don, you're a May baby, right?
Yes.
We're both May babies.
Yeah. Memorial Day was my first meeting on Memorial Day itself that year. Do you remember a time when you didn't have alcohol and you were in trouble the first time?
I was friends with a girl who drank sherry. And when you have to drink sherry when you've been drinking scotch, I did have some panic about how am I going to make this work.
Wow. Yeah.
That was my panic. I wasn't on a mountaintop, though. I'm not a camper, hiker kind of girl.
Yeah. From then on, I was a planner. These are the things that I learned when I came into AA. Am I controlling alcohol? Is alcohol controlling me? And if alcohol is controlling me, I'm an alcoholic. So am I changing my plans to be sure that I go to a place where they serve alcohol?
You know, I heard this a little while back, and I want to share it with the listeners. Some people come to AA with a first step. They come knowing I'm whooped.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us get our first step while we're here. I got my first step here because I came in, relatively young, 26, and I came from alcoholics that were seizure alcoholics. So I didn't think that I was an alcoholic. I didn't have a brown coat. I wasn't living in a dumpster.
I'm not that bad.
It wasn't that bad. And then I heard something that gave me my first step. A woman at a conference said, if you're an alcoholic, you shouldn't drink. And if you're not an alcoholic, then not drinking should be easy. And then I had to admit that thirsty for me looked like I changed my mind. I'm only going to have 2. I had 1,000. And in too long island, I used to use this a lot. I'm going to stop when the price goes up after happy hour. Like I could never keep those commitments. I always change my mind.
Yeah.
That was how I looked back and saw I had been in trouble for a long time before I knew it.
What really got me was when I came to AA and someone said, if you think you might have a problem with alcohol, you have a problem with alcohol. Because people who don't have a problem with alcohol never worry about it.
They are not counting drinks.
Oh.
They are not counting the days in between drinks.
Convicted, guilty, I'm an alcoholic.
Right.
Olis, who's our guest today?
You know, Don, I'm so excited. We have my really good friend from in person, my friend Sharron, my road buddy. Sharron is our guest today from Ridgefield, New Jersey.
All right.
But first,
the news.
You liked my news sound, didn't you?
That was nice. The Lavinia anniversary of the Pacific region. Since the 1995 General Service Conference approved the production of the Lavinia magazine, the Spanish-speaking community has been strengthened by the experience, strength, and hope that the magazine has provided both inside and outside the fellowship. The anniversary event in the Pacific region began in 2011. Since then, it has rotated between the areas of the region in the month of July. There, we have emphasized the importance of increasing subscriptions and awareness and sales of other books, calendars, and service materials that our beloved grapevine, Lavinia, has. Southern California, Area 5, will host this year's event. The dates are July 25th through the 27th, 2025, at the Pacific Palms Resort in the City of Industry, California. More information can be found at aalaviniaregional05.org.
Our 12 Steps is a brand new collection of stories from AA members about working the program's 12 Steps of Recovery. Each chapter illuminates a different step through the experiences of a wide variety of AA members. This volume features all new, up-to-date stories from the pages of Grapevine, the International Journal of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is great for sponsees and step meetings, and it's only $13.99 at aagrapevine.org/books.
Hi, my name is Sharron and I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is September 26, 2016, and my home group is the Bronx Big Book Study. We meet every single night online, and we go through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous line by line.
Man, Sharron, it's so good to see you. I haven't seen you in a month of Sundays.
It's good to see you as well. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Sharron, that is an internet meeting. The Bronx Big Book Study?
Yes, sir.
I've visited there before. That's a great meeting. Did you get sober at an online meeting?
No, actually, Don, I got sober in a in-person meeting. Actually, I usually like to say I was dropped off by God in a meeting. And it was a meeting in Fort Lee, New Jersey at 6:30 p.m. And I could tell you I had no idea I was even going to be there. No idea. And there was a woman at the podium that looked quite like me, a Black woman. And she said all I needed was an ounce of hope.
What was going on inside of you that gave you the willingness to go to AA and quit drinking?
Don, I had a hole in my soul, and I just felt heavy. I had this heaviness. And I heard you all talking earlier about when Olis mentioned, some of us get our first step outside and some get it inside. I absolutely had my first step outside. I knew something was wrong. I knew I couldn't fix it. And I was hoping AA could help.
That was my experience.
Sharron, you and I have had the pleasure, and this is such a rare thing for me on the podcast, that we had the same home group in person. The Sahara Club, 7 a.m. sunrise meeting was our first home group together. We met there. And when you're sober and you travel, you know that AA is the same everywhere you go, but it also is different. There's a slightly different culture. And it took me a while to find a home group I loved. And we both, I think, fell in love with that 7 a.m. meeting. Used to come in because you worked, I'm retired, and you would get up at like 7:45 and run out to get to work. You invited me into the Bronx Big Book Study, and that became, during the pandemic, our online home group. And we've shared home groups for years and been in service together. So I would love for you to talk about things that you've done in Alcoholics Anonymous that have made life more than just not drinking. Like, what's the secret sauce to anybody that's new that thinks this is just about not drinking?
Well, I would start off about 2 years sober. I took a commitment as a GSR, a general service representative. That's the middle person between the home group and your district. So this is the person that's going to keep you connected to what's going on at the district level, what's going on GSO level, and just all of these different intergroup and H&I commitments. And oh man, I remember my first conference where I really realized that Alcoholics Anonymous was an organization of people that absolutely loved AA. Like, I had no idea. I remember stepping in and thinking like, oh, look at these nice little volunteer people. Oh, this is great. And somebody quickly corrected me and said, these people are doing service. Mm-hmm. And then when I learned later that they're doing service for me, for you, and for the people who haven't even reached us yet.
So talk to me about, for you personally, right? Talk a little bit about why you, for instance, sponsor.
I wouldn't be sitting here with you today if I didn't sponsor. And when I look at sponsorship, that is probably the thread into me, which is woven in, that even allows me to sit here. And what I get from sponsorship, you know, when I sit down with somebody and crack the big book open, like magic comes out of there. And we start to build this relationship that I didn't even know was possible. And every time I sit down with a different person, a different experience. You know, I had the experience of speaking with people who are not my sponsees, who just kind of crossed my path, and we just cracked the book open. I can walk them through a 4th step, a 5th step, and do these things where it's just to help them along their path, just like it was done for me. Yeah. And it's been such a blessing in my life, the idea of sponsorship. And I think, Olis, you and I both said, like, how many sponsees you got? I don't know. Right. I don't know. It's like, how many people use me? And then like, people just like funnel in and funnel out and funnel all around. And I'm just so blessed to be able to be of service in a way like that.
One of the jokes when you ask people who do a lot of sponsoring and you ask them how many sponsees they have, they say about half.
Yep.
About half of the people are actually doing the work.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Are just claiming us as sponsors.
Yeah.
How do you sponsor someone?
So I think first we meet somewhere, and usually I am kind of qualifying myself just to give my idea like, hey, I am an alcoholic. I am a real alcoholic, and this is what I did, and this is how I got to where I am today.
When do you start them on the steps?
So what we do is I start from the preface of the book, the very beginning. We crack the book open, and one of the things I like to do is write the set-aside prayer, a couple of questions, and I ask them, are you willing to go to any length to stay sober, right? Are you willing to go to any length for a spiritual experience? Are you willing to carry this message to another sick and suffering alcoholic once we are done? And then we do the set-aside prayer on the other side. And I also like to write the date we crack that book open. And then we go line by line, Don, like line by line. What I've started recently is the sponsees now read to me, and we stop in a paragraph or a page, depending on how the flow of the reading is. And sometimes in a book, I like to go in first person, where I'll say, they'll read it verbatim from the book. And I say, hey, can you read that in first person? Yeah. And then they start to put the I, and then I start to ask them questions about that.
Yeah.
Right. So then it becomes like this live thing that we're going through together and having this conversation where their experience is matching what's in the book. And then they get to find their own first step experience. Man, I get excited just talking about it. Right now, I probably have 4 people actively in the book. And I think that's the limit for me right now.
Sharron, would you please tell people what you mean going through the work?
Reading the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous line by line. And once we get to the 4th step that's clearly outlined, we do a 4th step inventory. right? We do the sex inventory, we'll do the fear inventory, and we'll do the resentment inventory. And then out of that will come some harms. And then we'll do a fifth step, right? We'll sit down and do a fifth step. And then 6 and 7, like we go line by line. And just like how it's outlined in the book. So once we go through the work, and it's funny because the work is not when I sit down a sponsee. That's me doing the work. It's when they sit somebody else down, when they carry this message to another alcoholic. That is the actual work. But first you need to go through the work, right?
Yeah.
So that would be me taking the sponsee through another sick and suffering alcoholic through the book, and then them taking another person through. And that is carrying the message. And that is the work that we do here.
Can you tell people what the set aside prayer is?
God, please enable me to set aside everything I think I know about myself, the 12 steps, this book, the meetings, my disease, and you, God, so I may have an open mind and a new experience with all these things. Please let me see the truth.
That's being willing to have an open mind and be changed.
There's so many steps of Alcoholics Anonymous woven into the set aside prayer.
What was going on with you that gave you the willingness to come to AA?
For me, I remember when I could not stop drinking. I could not stop drinking.
You remember a time when, for the first time, where you realized that you were in trouble with alcohol?
I was standing in my bedroom, in my closet, and I had a bottle in my hand, and I did not want to drink, but I had to drink. And I remember saying to myself, I am in trouble. I am going to die this way. And I got good and drunk because that's all I knew how to do. I didn't know about AA. I didn't know about anything. And I would tell you that I probably drank for another 6 months after. There was nothing different about that last day I drank. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous off the street, not in a plan to go there. Nothing different happened that Sunday when I stopped drinking. Nothing happened. So when we talk about this idea of this white light experience, and like something happened beknownst to me that I had no control over. And I thought I was going to drink on Friday. And Friday came, and I was put in a place where I made some decisions where I normally would have said no, and I said yes. And that yes led me to a non-alcoholic house on a Friday night playing board games with a 6-year-old. The house that I am sitting in right now. I came here that Friday night and I didn't want to be here because I wanted to be home and I wanted to be drunk.
Man.
And I didn't drink that night. So now I have 5 days of me not drinking. I drank for 25 years, 25 years. And the idea of alcoholically, I don't know what that means. I drank to get drunk and I always succeeded. Even if I said I was going to have one, I always had more. I was going to drink no matter what. It didn't matter. And that's what step 1 tells me.
Yes.
Step 1 for the new people isn't, I can't drink. Step 1 is, I can't not drink.
Yeah, that's it, Olis. That's it.
Yeah.
And, I remember every day for about a year saying, okay, today I'm going to go home. When I get off work, I would not start drinking till I got off of work because I felt like you're an alcoholic if you drink at work. So this was a rule that I set up, and I lived by it. Unless, of course, I didn't go to work and stayed up all night, and then I would be a morning drinker because it was, I hadn't gone to bed. But at any rate, every day I would say, today I'm not going to drink when I get home. And I would drive home. I would walk into the kitchen. I'm not going to drink. I would open up the refrigerator door and I would say, I am not going to drink today. I'm just going to have a soda. I would reach out my hand and I'd change my mind and grab a beer.
When you came to Alcoholics Anonymous, did you come to get sober to hold on to something that ultimately you lost?
Yes. I had a relationship of 17 years. And it was like the crossroads, right? It was a fork in the road. And I remember he was ready to leave. And I didn't know what to do. I was in Alcoholics Anonymous. I started to feel a little better because I wasn't drinking. And I couldn't believe in this lovely miracle was happening. But yet the man of my dreams is leaving. And I so wanted to chase him. I wanted to chase him. And I remember saying to him, I have 63 days. Look, don't you want me? And he said no. And I remember sitting in Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, drinking your coffee, eating your cookies, crying, 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 crying. And what I realized today is, and somewhere along the journey, I think early on, I realized that had I stayed in that relationship, you would not have me sitting here with you today. And I realized that God had did for me what I was not willing to do. I don't even think I would have been capable of doing that. And I remember when the relationship ended and I was thinking like, now what? Alcoholics Anonymous welcomed me with open arms. And I started doing these things that I've never done. Don, you mentioned camping. I'm a city girl that now camps. I am a camper. And we don't do that. I don't do that. No. Now, today, I'm a camper. And it was out of those things. I started to say yes to things I would have normally said no to. And those things allowed me these different experiences and these friends. And when I realized I always wanted to do those type of things, but alcohol took preference. And I just did that. And here it is. This relationship ends and I get all of these other new relationships.
Yes. Life opens up. It's amazing the possibilities, everything that being sober and living a sober life can give us. Sometimes, though, life throws obstacles in front of us.
Growth opportunities, Don.
I always hate it when they say this is an opportunity for growth. That means something's really going wrong. Sharron, how do you get through tough times and stay sober?
It's funny. I had a thought as you were speaking. I remember, and Alice, you probably remember this because I went to you for counsel. That's exactly what I did. And I remember I was looking for a new job, right? And I had this new opportunity. And it was the job of my dreams. And somewhere on the application, it said, must pass Homeland Security clearance. Uh-oh, that might be a problem. Because my story is, I have some felony stuff somewhere. I don't know. Something happened.
Mm-hmm.
And
we tend to have problematic pasts.
Yes. And that was a problematic past. And I remember going to my sponsor and Alice and saying, hey, so if the people ask me the question, I'll be honest and I'll tell them what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't ask me, I'm not going to say nothing.
And what came back to me was, it sounds like you're withholding information. And the next thing that came, do you trust God? And I remember thinking, hold it, this is serious. We're talking about my employment, the job of my dreams. I need this job.
You went to an interview and they said, if you could have any job, what would it be? You told them, and then they called you and offered you the job you said you wanted.
And the conversation never happens between me and the people, right? My sponsor, my network. It's the conversation between me and God. Because I remember laying my head on the pillow that night and I was like, God, what do I do? And what came back was call the lady. And then my phone rings. It's the lady. She called me to get additional information about the job. I had to give her some paperwork. She called me and I said, I needed to ask you a question. I have some past background stuff. Could this be a problem for me? And she said, let me get back to you. And I thought it was over. I thought it was over. And I said, I knew it. I shouldn't have said anything. And then she called me back and said, no, you're good. You're good.
You know, the things that are difficult are just, they're opportunities to grow. They're disguised as problems. But one of the things I always ask myself is, if I do this thing, whatever it is, I don't tell the whole truth, or I steal, or I cheat, or I misrepresent, what am I saying to myself and what am I saying to the power that I believe? Am I affirming my faith? Or am I quietly, subtly saying, I don't trust you? And it gives me the courage to do the things that I'm afraid to do.
And Sharron, you're an example of that courage. And it's been such a pleasure to get to know you today.
This has been wonderful, actually, Don and Alice. Thank you for inviting me. This has been great.
Do you and your friends use the Grapevine app? It's a portal into the world of the Grapevine. The app is provided at no cost, but you get the most out of it by subscribing today.
App development is all about adding features and squashing bugs. If you haven't opened the app in a while or you uninstalled it, check it out again. Subscribing to the app supports everything we do.
We provide the podcast, the YouTube channel, our Instagram account, both the Grapevine magazine and Lavinia, and all the Grapevine books and literature. The app is free to download in your phone's app store and has great content and features provided at no cost to you.
If you want to help us reach out to other alcoholics, subscribe for $2.99 a month. You'll support all things Grapevine, including this podcast. Did you hear that young man celebrating 18 months of sobriety last night? He told the group, AA is teaching me to be responsible and a cannibal.
A cannibal? I hope he meant accountable. You know he announced he has openings for residents in his halfway house.
It's really not that funny.
Thanks for joining us. The AA Grapevine Half-Hour Variety Hour is posted every Monday and is produced by AA Grapevine, Inc. We don't speak for AA as a whole. We share the experience, strength, and hope of members to help others recover from alcoholism. All things Grapevine are available at aagrapevine.org, including our app and how to get in touch with us. Find us on Instagram and YouTube. If you want to know more about AA, visit aa.org or search online for Alcoholics Anonymous and your city.